long time ago, in a mythical made-up land known as the USSR, lived two brothers, Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, who had perhaps the most Russian-sounding last names of all time. Whenever they weren't wrestling bears or dying of famine, whatever it was Russians were doing back then, they were creating incredibly loved and world-renowned science fiction stories known as books. One of those books from the early 1970s would go on to become the incredibly influential Roadside Picnic, about a family stopping at the side of the road for a bite to eat and dying of radiation poisoning. A book which, according to some Amazon reviews, is the best thing ever written. But they've clearly never read 50 Shades of Grey. Losers. The general idea of Roadside Picnic, and don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it for you, you should really do that yourself by reading it. No, seriously, read it, then we can all be pretentious together about it in the comments. Is that aliens are visited and left over a 2-day period, and left behind what are known as zones. No one knows anything about these aliens, no one saw these aliens, no one knows how these aliens got here. So how do they know they're aliens? I don't know, use your imagination. These zones are areas where the laws of physics as we know seemingly don't apply. One, because physics is a made-up concept, and I'm a staunch anti-physics believer. Isaac Newton was a government plant to give the kids autism. And two, whatever came here is clearly way beyond our basic human comprehension, and our wet, slimy head organ clearly isn't equipped to deal with it. But that hasn't stopped people known as stalkers from illegally entering the zone to recover alien artifacts to sell for a profit. Back when stalker meant that and not your #1 Twitch donator. But much like being a top Twitch donator, it's a highly perilous and life-threatening job, as we learn as we follow the main character Red. He takes various journeys in and out of the zone and encounters unusual, dangerous, and almost sentient-like anomalies that they call bug traps. Strange things in the zone that defy everything we know about the world. There's shadows and fire being created without light, energy sources surrounded by their own destructive gravitational pulls, and spawned balls of electricity that will zap you harder than Ted Bundy the last time he wore a hat. In the zone, any step could be your last, like London, and stalkers must traverse through an incredibly slow manner known as making a mess, in order to not walk directly into a bug trap that may or may not be visible to the human eye. Every step must first be accompanied by throwing a metal bolt in front of you, and if it doesn't violently explode, then you shouldn't either. Shouldn't. The Strugatsky brothers do an excellent job of transporting you to this dangerous and hostile world, which apparently isn't a commentary on the USSR, which is probably a smart thing, because I hear Siberia can be kind of cold. According to them, it actually falls in line with communist ideals, which actually makes sense considering people need to scavenge to feed themselves. The way that they painstakingly describe the environments and the appearances of people, even down to the smell that Red was currently smelling at the time, does a terrific job of transporting you from the pages of the book to an actual tangible place that you can see, smell and touch. And no, that won't be the most pretentious thing I say in this video. Redrick threw the cigarette butt into a trash can and got into the elevator. He didn't close the door in time, and a few people squeezed in next to him. A fat man breathing asthmatically, an over-perfumed woman with a sullen boy munching a chocolate bar, and a heavy old lady with a badly shaved chin. Redrick was squished into a corner, his eyes closed so he wouldn't have to see the boy whose mouth was dripping with chocolate saliva, but whose face was fresh, pure without a single hair. So he wouldn't have to see the mother, whose meager bust was adorned with a necklace of black sparks set in silver. And so he wouldn't have to see the bulging, sclerotic eyes of the fat man, and the repulsive warts on the old woman's bloated mug. See, I had to learn to read for this video. And that description wasn't even describing the zone itself, as they don't let fat people in there. That's because 3/4 or so of the book actually takes place out of the zone, with the zone always remaining as a narrative point that pulls you back, whether that be in conversation or actually physically returning there. But despite that, the zone is always calling you. It's the very same allure that the stalkers feel and why they keep heading back there, despite it containing dangerous things known as hell slime that will melt your skin off and turn your bones to rubber. But the biggest reason being the Golden Sphere, an item in the zone that's said to grant your innermost deepest desires, that's kinda gold coloured and a little bit this shaped. The name of the book, Roadside Picnic, is actually a pretty interesting theory towards the aliens coming, and also a pretty disturbing revelation. To paraphrase a conversation from the book, imagine stopping at the side of the road for a picnic on your journey. After you finish eating, you pack up and leave, continuing onward, paying very little thought to where you just stopped. But once you're gone, the terrified animals local to the area emerge from their hiding spots after watching in terror as these strange fleshy creatures appeared with their unusual technology. And once these visitors have left and the animals are brave enough to come and investigate, they discover foreign items that may have accidentally been left behind or deliberately discarded once they were done with. Things that their vastly different, tiny little stupid animal brains couldn't possibly comprehend. We could be nothing more than the squirrels in the trees. We're nothing. Well, I'm more of a possum really. The reception to the Strugatsky brothers novel is generally regarded as pretty good. There's something about a detailed description of an overweight asthmatic in an elevator that's incredibly alluring. Oh wow, they made a book about me. And that's after the Soviet censorship that the original version received. You know, the Goskazmazat. That lot weren't too keen on most things and had a hand in meddling with a lot of stuff that they deemed, let's say, unsavory. You know, things that they wouldn't want their citizens exposed to. Promiscuous themes, unsavory language, violence, and forced labor camps. Wait. Despite censoring and publishing difficulties due to the book being too harsh, in other words, the fictional book was too real, it would eventually be released and translated into many different languages, having an incredibly large and influential reach on the world of science fiction and the things that tend to get made there. To the point where Boris Strugatsky, one of the book's authors, credits the success of the book for bringing the English word stalker into the Russian language. But not only does he credit the book that he and his brother wrote for this accomplishment, he also cites Andrei Tarkovsky's 1979 Stalker for playing a vital role in this too. And speaking of Andrei Tarkovsky's 1979 Stalker, everyone died of cancer. An unfortunate side effect of being in Russia is that you're in Russia. So renowned director Andrei Tarkovsky decided to film perhaps one of his most well-known and adored films in Estonia. You know, the other Russia. A move that may have ended up resulting in the deaths of Andrei, his wife, and one of the lead actors. But we'll get back to that. Loosely based on the Strugatsky brothers novel, and by loosely based I mean it's basically just another interpretation of it, the screenplay for Tarkovsky's 1979 Stalker was actually written by the brothers, and this time takes place in a fictional land where they all speak Counter-Strike, known as Russia. In the original book, it's never actually strictly stated where Roadside Picnic canonically takes place, but according to the foreword at the beginning of the book, written by another science fiction writer, Ursula Guin, she theorizes that it takes place somewhere in North America or Canada, and I'm inclined to agree with her due to my inability to compose original thoughts. Because Western civilization is a plague on all of mankind, this interpretation chooses to ignore that, in a change that's rather inconsequential to the overarching narrative of the movie, considering that this time around, despite 3/4 of the book taking place outside of the zone, we are very much in the thick of it. Following a stalker, a scientist, and a writer, the story follows the trio as they illegally enter the zone, as they're guided to a room that will grant them their innermost deepest desires, as we the viewers follow them along for the journey. An incredibly beautifully shot journey, which at times can be overwhelmingly slow and bleak on account of them all being Russian, which simultaneously perfectly conveys the feeling of what it must be like to be in one of the zones. Much like a twisted alternate version of The Wizard of Oz, where all of the little people have been replaced with Russians, before they enter the zone, as they're still subjected to the brutal life behind the barbed wire fences, the screen is overlaid with an oppressive sepia filter that suddenly lifts to reveal a vibrant, once more colourful world as they enter the zone. As despite it being a harsh and inhospitable land, once they've made it past those barbed wire fences, they're now free from the crushing boot of man that keeps its citizens down. Out here, you're a stalker, and it's up to you to make something of it. I told you that wouldn't be the most pretentious thing I'd say. The way that the Stalker traverses the land and deeply respects it could also be mirroring religious beliefs, with him seemingly placing all of his faith blindly into the zone despite having very little understanding of it, and using that faith to keep himself and the others alive. This would also be the part where I make yet another wildly pretentious video essay styled remark, somewhere along the lines of it representing the fall of the Soviet Union and the freedom that theoretically came after that, but considering that that wasn't going to happen for at least another decade yet, I'm not. With the way that it's depicted in the movie, the zone is less of a place and more of a thing. It adapts and changes, and if you fail to adapt and change with it, it will quite literally chew you up and spit you out with rather disastrous consequences. The Stalker understands this the most, with him being the one who's most afraid of the zone, despite being here many times before, which is in fact a direct reference to him just being kind of a pussy. The surreal experience of watching Stalker almost at times feels like you're watching a stage play, with there being multiple instances of the characters looking directly at the camera as if they're addressing the viewer personally, with the viewer even being directly addressed at the end of the movie in such a way that affirms and doubles down on those deliberate fourth wall breaking moments to almost recognize you as a fourth person. A fly on the wall throughout this whole adventure that's filled with drawn out and dramatic long takes that makes you feel like you're sitting on the sideline watching a conversation take place. And not to spoil the adventure, but just like a late night wank, it ends with no one finding any fulfillment and feeling even more depressed than when they started. But while saying that, Stalker is an incredible experience. Not quite as incredible as reading the 1-star Google reviews on it, and manages to capture that otherworldly yet hostile feeling while looking absolutely gorgeous at the same time and being a perfect example of the term, every frame a painting. But at what cost? The cost of a smug British prick making a video about it. Right from the get-go, Stalker seemed to be a cursed production, with a year's worth of exterior shots being improperly developed, resulting in the entirety of the lost footage needing to be reshot, internal squabbles between Tarkovsky and various crew members, and various people working on the movie suffering allergic reactions on their faces due to long arduous filming days near a chemical plant that constantly rained down toxic particles on them. These non-consensual Estonian showers are long believed to be the cause of the deaths of 3 people working on the movie, all with the exact same illness. According to an article translated from Russian to English, Vladimir Ivanovich Sharon, the sound designer on the movie, blames their exposure to said nearby chemical factory to the deaths of the director Andrei Tarkovsky, his wife Larissa, and Anatoly Solonitsyn, the writer, who all died from lung cancer or bronchial cancer. Many people also find it quite strange that since the filming of Stalker, that many other people involved in the production have also passed away for various other reasons, which suddenly becomes a lot less strange when you take into account that people are people, and people tend to die. There's also been many parallels between the Russian zone and the Chernobyl disaster of 1986 and the exclusion zone that would be made around that, but there's also been many parallels made between me and undiagnosed mental illness. Factually speaking, Stalker may have influenced some poor underpaid Ukrainian nuclear power plant worker to deliberately blow it up in hopes of finding alien artifacts, but the result of that nuclear explosion would also influence another piece of Stalker media. Slavic Morrowind gets janky Eastern European style and is loosely based on the book and the movie, in that it's actually nothing at all like either of them, with it being the cheeky breaky game which places a heavy emphasis on weapons and combat, whereas both of its inspirations make a clear point to largely omit those details. But hey, slap my cheeks and call me an American, because I love weapons and combat. Especially when it's in an impoverished and unstable land. The real meat and potatoes of the games, or diet sausage if you will, is that a second disaster took place at the Chernobyl exclusion zone, resulting in the appearance of strange anomalies and sought-after artifacts, with stalkers heading into the dangerous zone to try and retrieve them. There's 3 games currently released: Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, Stalker Clear Sky, and Stalker Call of Pripyat, with a 4th one soon to be released under the name Stalker 2, as apparently they can't count. All 3 games play fairly similar to each other, with there being changes and alterations between them to help them feel unique and different, with it often being debated online which is the worst entry in the series by people who are factually wrong on the grounds that they argue on the internet. The premise of the games tends to be rather simple, with the first beginning after you're involved in an automobile accident that rather unfortunately leaves you stranded in Ukraine. Your first task is to pay off your debt to the merchant who saved your life, where you'll quickly learn that the zone is a brutal, inhospitable place where humans have no business being. Like London, there's plenty of things in the zone that would happily kill you other than the zone itself, like the aforementioned anomalies that can electrocute you, pull you into the air, or cause you to spontaneously combust. So that's nice. If it isn't the collected artifacts themselves slowly debuffing and killing your character like Prime Energy Drink, it's the group of enemies that will work together and attempt to sneak, flank, or even flush you out with grenades. Combat can be quick and brutal, with the outdated and overused weapons jamming in the middle of a firefight, so you can feel like you're in a real Eastern European conflict. They start off being inaccurate and unreliable, but Stalker doesn't concern itself with silly concepts known as balanced progression, and quickly jumps from inaccurate and inefficient to immaculate laser beam, something that you'll be incredibly thankful for, as quite literally everything wants to kill you. The environment, mutants, zombies and worse. Russians. Which is especially helpful as the game randomly decides to become a horror game and use the power of motion sickness against you after introducing the migraine monster, resembling your average balding British man. Just like the book and the movie inspired by it, stalkers rely on the use of bolts to help them navigate the world, which is more or less just fan service for enjoyers of the source material, or a necessity if you happen to be blind, because the biggest defense against the anomalies in this game is not standing in them. But if you do happen to walk into one and perish, that's completely okay, because if you're not constantly save scumming, then you're playing the game wrong. And speaking of playing the game, sometimes you can't because it won't let you. On more than one occasion, I found myself in a situation where the scripting seemed to have completely given up, with an NPC required to progress a quest, locking themselves in a building and refusing to come out, and finding myself soft-locked at the end of the second game during one of the worst finales ever, with absolutely no way to proceed. In other words, everything is working as intended. Much like the United States of America, the zone itself is a place full of evil abominations hell-bent on killing you for your assault rifle, but it's also a place of potential. Thanks to the Ukrainian Make-A-Wish Foundation, in the form of a wish-granting monolith, stalkers have long told the tale of a mysterious monolith deep within the zone, something that's said to grant the innermost desires of anyone worthy enough to get to it. I want it. The free Robux will be mine. But what I ended up getting instead was cataracts, which is pretty much the same as playing Roblox anyway. I received what some would call the bad ending by reaching the wish granter and asking for the zone to disappear, followed by my character going blind and the game immediately ending. But bad ending is a subjective term, much like the concept of going blind. Just open your eyes, bro. But don't worry, if you're not done reducing the population of Slavic ethnicities, there's 2 more Stalker games to try out. Stalker Clear Sky, where the sky is indeed not clear. A prequel to Shadow of Chernobyl that begins after being caught outside in the consequences of climate change, that sees you once again in the zone, but this time dropped right in the middle of a new faction war system, which much like taxes, you can simply choose to ignore with no negative side effects whatsoever. Then there's Stalker Call of Pripyat, which has you playing as an undercover narc in a game where they remove the ability to rebind the low crouch option. A somewhat more arcadey experience due to the weapons and ammo weighing less, allowing for you to carry much more at any given time, which comes in extremely helpful when you eventually make it to Pripyat, that place they stole from Call of Duty 4. All in all, comrades, the Gopnik trilogy is a must-play for those interested in historically accurate Eastern European culture, and goes down a treat with a nice cold glass of compot. As for the other adaptations and influences of the Strugatsky's brothers novel, there's of course the Metro games, a 1977 that one, TV series named Visit from Space that had all of its copies destroyed by censors after airing, just in case anyone had the bright idea of mingling with those dirty alien bloods. A 2016 pilot for a Roadside Picnic TV show that never released because God despises us. As well as a pretty loving fan-made independent Finnish movie named Viohik, or The Zone in English, a word that I mispronounced because I'm racist against the Finnish. Can they just hurry up and finish what they're up to already? They've been at it since 1917. A movie with a lack of budget, but not a lack of passion. It's free to watch on their YouTube channel with English subtitles for us uncultured ones, that follows a retired stalker quickly becoming an unretired stalker as he works with Red's son to find the mythical Finnish pyramid in a land where everyone talks funny. That's it for this video, and thanks for watching. How many metal bolts out of 10 would you give Roadside Picnic? Consider supporting the channel on Patreon or through the YouTube membership system, and maybe one day I'll stop denying the existence of countries. And while I'm on the topic of asking questions, what's your favourite made-up country?